The man it is who we've been talking about for well over a decade has finally been revealed, and it is Scopper Gaban. So this is a monumental day for One Piece fans. Scopper Gaban is a name that traditionally only comes up in the craziest and most stupidest of theories. So to have him finally in front of us is extremely surreal for me personally, and I could not be more hyped that we are finally getting to explore the second wing of the former Pirate King. But before we deal with that, we need to talk about circles. One of the more curious things about this chapter is that Luffy actually stumbles upon the spell circle that was used to transport Shamrock and Gunko to Elbaf. That's very intriguing because back on Egghead Island, these circles were also there, but they were temporary. The Elder Stars used them to get to the island, but the circles vanished shortly thereafter. And I think the fact that the circle is still here means that it was neither Shamrock nor Gunko who created it in the first place. And this is more likely a gate or portal made by someone or something imbued with this power. Because if it was Shamrock, then why leave the circle? Why not just get rid of it, cover some tracks, summon a new one when you need to leave wherever you happen to be. And I really like that idea because if we are summoning a third Holy Knight, then logic would dictate that they would need to enter Elbaf through this gateway where Luffy, Zoro, and now Scopper Gaban are lurking right outside. Which is definitely not what I would want to see if I was a lone Holy Knight. An Emperor of the Sea, a wing of the former Pirate King, and Zoro, just Zoro waiting for me. But there's also another opportunity here if the circle is indeed a gateway, which is that it may be able to transport people to Elbaf, but also it can theoretically transport people back to the Holy Land of Marijois. So if our crew saw fit for any reason, then perhaps this is the mechanism by which they could all invade, rather than having to sail all the way back to the Red Line. One of the key principles of One Piece is never going backwards. I mean, almost never. It's happened here and there, like we did go back to Water 7 after any Slobby, but they were considered the same general area of the world. But Oda really doesn't like to retrace steps, and I imagine that's because Luffy wouldn't want to either. We've come this far into the new world, on the cusp of discovering Laugh Tale and becoming the Pirate King, so sailing backwards isn't an appealing idea from any perspective. However, a funky fast travel portal that could take us right back to where we were, then that's a different story. But something that you may or may not have missed is Nami's commentary on the circle, which is that she's read about some countries that use circles like these to summon assorted demons, which is a reference to Namakura Island where Brook was sent by Bartholomew Kuma. And this isn't the first time that Nami has whipped out book knowledge like this. Very late into pre-time skip, Nami also read about Raijin Island on Weatheria, which is the island that's being perpetually struck by lightning. And I guess my point here is that Nami's geographical knowledge of this world, not just weather related, but also its cultural elements, is so incredibly deep, but very not often utilized in any decent way outside of navigating and sailing. So I love some more of that. But we are then interrupted by the man of the chapter, and look, I'm quite amused that Oda even tried to hide his true identity from us at first. I mean, he really didn't try at all. But Scopper Gaban is just introduced to us as Yasan, which is very similar to how Ray Lee refers to himself. He prefers to be called Ray-san. However, the Ya is a bit confusing to English readers. It actually comes from Scopper Gaban's real name, which is Scopper Gaban. However, when this name was first used in the Viz translation, it was simplified to Gaban because Gaban was probably considered a step too Japanese. To be fair, in Japanese, Scopper is also Sukopa, so I can see why they made the decisions that they did. I feel like if Scopper Gaban was introduced these days, they might just keep it as Gaban. And it does make this introduction a bit more confusing. His name is Ya because it's a shortening of Gaban, but Oda really could not have made it any more obvious if he tried, and I do think he tried a lot, because the very first thing that Mr. Yasan does is throw a colossal axe at Luffy's group, which to me feels very Garp-coded. Unlike the very chill Silver's Ray Lee, Gaban seems to be a much more fiery presence who engages in dangerous activities for a laugh. Although he wasn't always like this, and Gaban very much seems to have followed the well-established One Piece path of old man evolution, which is most potently displayed through Sengoku. When he was a fleet admiral of the Marines, he was extremely serious, no-nonsense, and very cautious. However, since retiring, he's become a joyful, smiley old crackpot. And what we're seeing with Gaban is definitely Roger's influence. Like what we see with Sengoku is is Garp's influence. And we even have a couple of flashback panels of Roger and Gaban, and Ray Lee's even in one of them. And they're all arguing, assumedly because Roger wanted to do something really stupid and extremely dangerous. But before moving on, this is another glorious day for us, the Grand Fleet, as we get to mark Crocus friend reveal on the bingo card, which means that we're 4 chapters into the year and have 4 hits on the card already. Very strong start. But we are hitting a lot of the easy stuff. I do think that achieving an eventual bingo is still going to be quite difficult, unlike meeting your entertainment needs, which can easily be achieved by checking out the Calm Belt, which is a channel currently undertaking the project of re-editing the Grand Line Review video library into themed compilations. Very long videos, perfect for your very long form activities like driving, drawing, gaming, sleeping, whatever it is you do for extended periods of time, we've got you covered for as long as it takes, with no need to pause what you're doing and pick a new video every 15 minutes or so. They're not just compilations either, because throughout the years there have been what I refer to as lost videos. And these are Grand Line Review projects that were fully written, recorded, and edited. However, for various different reasons, were never published. I'm not going to tell you where they are, how many there are, or even what they are though, because that's not really in the spirit of One Piece, is it? My videos, well, they're yours if you want them. I left everything I own in the link in the description. So if this new long-form channel meets your needs, then please do check it out and make sure to subscribe, because that is insanely important for small channels, and I look forward to seeing you there. But for now, let's get back to you, me. Thanks, me. The moment we met Silver's Ray Lee, it was suspected that Scopper Gaban would fulfill that Sanji role aboard Roger's ship, just because of the parallels between Roger and Luffy were far too strong, as well as the similarity between Zoro and Ray Lee. And so we were waiting to complete the Roger Pirates monster trio with this Sanji-like figure, and mate, we got just that. I love that Gaban is introduced wearing a Hawaiian shirt, because it's like he's ripped it straight out of Sanji's wardrobe. Sanji definitely goes for those more flamboyant looks as we saw on Skypiea, but also most recently on Egghead Island where he was donning a Hawaiian shirt. And I think that's a very purposeful connection that Oda made here. At one stage, Luffy even says that this is what Sanji's gonna be like as an old man, but that's more in response to all of the love stuff. I don't know how this is gonna be translated in the official, but Scopper Gaban claims to be a missionary of love, which is a profession that I'm sure Sanji will volunteer for the moment he finds out it exists, and it may even inspire a new post-all-blue dream for him. And with all of the similarities, I'm surprised that Zoro didn't have a stronger reaction to Gaban. Something like a deep sigh and saying, another one. But he actually seems quite apathetic to Gaban's existence. And to be fair, no one in Luffy's group actually knows who he is yet, apart from, I guess, Road, who's staying quiet for reasons. But by the end of the chapter, we, the readers, know Usopp's group knows. But as far as Luffy, Zoro, and Nami are considered, this is just some wacky old man. A wacky old man who confirms the age speculation in regards to a couple of giants, as he is the father of Colin and the not husband of Ripley. And just as I suspected, Colin is significantly older than he's portrayed as. Colin is actually 20, which makes him older than Luffy, but it's the mixture of human and giant DNA that have kept him looking more like a 12-year-old. And I have to wonder, what does that mixture make Colin? Because Gaban goes into a bit of a speech about the various mixed races of the One Piece world, which is pretty funny because he's essentially saying if it's got a hole, it can be filled, hence Ripley and Colin. But the first mixed race Gaban flags are the Buccaneers, which is a really great confirmation because up until now we've been thinking the giants must have been involved in their lineage somewhere, but Buccaneers could easily have been and were considered a standalone unique race, especially because they're considered to be extinct. But so long as giants and I guess humans exist, the ability to make more Buccaneers should always be possible. And I am wondering if Colin would therefore classify as a Buccaneer, being half human, half giant, if indeed that's how they're created. And if so, that would only give him infinitely more relevance to events past, present, and future, with Bonnie and her Buccaneer dad Kuma on Elbaf, but also the threat of Figgle and Shamrock now targeting children, which is a category that Colin falls into despite his age. But look, imagine what happens when Shamrock discovers that Colin is a Buccaneer, again, if he is a Buccaneer. In that case, Shamrock would either try to exterminate him on the spot with extreme prejudice, or attempt to take him back to the Holy Land for an even worse punishment for the crime of existing. And if Colin is a Buccaneer, then I desperately want him to meet what's left of Kuma, because the knowledge of his people enduring would be an amazing victory for him, which Kuma very much deserves right now. but other races are also mentioned. The Wotans are brought up. I'm not going to talk about them too much. I've done that a lot during the Elbaf arc already, but they're the mixture of giants and fishmen. Gaban also talks about the long necks like Gecko Moria, as well as long-legged tribe members being mixed race. He doesn't bring up members of the long-arm tribe, but I imagine they also fall into this category, as they're all thought to be inspired by the Ashinaga Tenaga, which are a pair of yokai in Japanese folklore, one of which has very long arms and the other of which has very long legs. But if they are a mixed race, then I'm not entirely sure which race humans bred with to create the various long people. Maybe it's giants again, except only certain aspects of giant DNA were passed on somehow. But because we can never answer a question in One Piece without posing a new replacement question, Scopper Gaban also mentions a completely new race being the Dosendatas. And I'm very curious to see how this is going to be translated in the official, because maybe they'll just leave it as the Japanese, but Viz generally doesn't do that. And what it most reminds me of is the character Dosen, one of the new fisherman pirates, who was named that because Dosen is an onomatopoeia for a heavy thud like one a hammer would make, Dosen, and Dosen is a hammerhead shark. But that part of the name isn't a huge help on its own. However, the data part, that I would bet some solid cash money that this is referring to the Tontara, because often Japanese words are subject to rendaku, which changes how you say a word when it becomes the second part of a compound word. A great example of this is origami. We all know what origami is, the funky paper stuff. But logically, that word should be orikami, because kami means paper. But due to the effect of rendaku, when you put it together as a compound word, it becomes origami instead of orikami. And I guess if we take both hammers and the Tontara into account, then this could actually refer to a race of dwarves that we would be more familiar with. You know, the Tolkien-esque miners and blacksmith who love to wield chunks and hammers. So maybe if it is translated in Viz, it would be hammer dwarves or hammertatas or even hammadatas. But look, I'm endlessly curious about how these are made, because to me the association with big chunky hammers and blacksmithing is very giant, and so would this be a combination of giants and Tontara? Because that would be ambitious. But then again, I guess that's the whole point of this section, as Scopper Gaban has the Mountain Eater epithet, and there's a lovely story told about how he got that defending Roger, etc. However, I can't help but look at Ripley and imagine that Scopper Gaban took his Mountain Eater credentials in a very different direction. It's very Big Mom in a way. Scopper Gaban is all about love having no boundaries, and Big Mom certainly did try to scientifically prove that as best she could. In fact, Big Mom herself did mate with a Tontara, which resulted in one of her most recent children, Charlotte Normand. She's only 10 years old and we didn't really see her do much of anything, but she does exist and she is a half human, half Tontara. But then Luffy, being Luffy, immediately reveals the plan that he shouldn't have said out loud, which is to free Loki. And Gaban is both very cooperative and quite oppositional towards this idea. And I think that's showing the real struggle between his much younger, more pragmatic self and the influence of Roger. So Gaban leads them right to Loki's key, but challenges Luffy to take it away from him, which is something that I cannot wait to see. As the last time we met a wing of the Pirate King, the Straw Hats were mere irrelevant saplings compared to the lush power garden of Rayleigh, and Shaki even said that Rayleigh was 100 times stronger than them, and that turned out to be very true. However, on Egghead Island, Luffy made the claim that he was now 100 times stronger when he fought Kizaru. So this could be a surprisingly even fight. And hey, Luffy may even be stronger than Scopper Gaban. He might not be smarter, in fact, he's almost certainly not. But if it came down to a serious fight, then surely Luffy has to win. At this point, he kind of has to, because he's about to attempt to become the Pirate King. He can't be seriously losing to the former Pirate King's subordinate a quarter of a century out of his prime. Although the other reason why Luffy should be able to overcome Gaban is Loki. Because if Scopper Gaban lives on Elbaf with his wife and child, then that means that he was also unable to stop Loki. Or he was away at the time. We know he likes to go away on trips. We saw him drinking with Crocus. Or he was there, he wasn't on a trip, and he just couldn't be bothered that day. But Gaban again name drops Shanks as the man who was able to beat Loki, so I guess he's trying to assess whether or not Luffy is at least on Shanks' level before handing over the key that could potentially doom all of Elbaf, which is a fair enough test in my opinion. Although Gaban does say something quite interesting, talking about how this secret chamber with the key has been raided, but he says that not even the bad guys wanted Loki to be freed. And it raises the question of, what bad guys? So far, the Giants of Elbaf have been presented quite monolithically. They all seem to share the same core beliefs and live in complete peace with one another, but every now and then there's just a little sign of something darker happening on Elbaf. The first was Rhodes' whole deranged giant superiority rant. Another was Harridan being considered tainted blood due to his foreign mother, although no one we've met holds this belief towards him. And now we even have these petty crime groups who have robbed the castle. Although I guess pillaging was a pretty big staple of Viking culture, so it may be well within Elbafian tradition to just take stuff. But I still feel like we haven't really been introduced to the dark side of Elbaf yet. And what I'm also interested in is, what is Luffy going to potentially learn from Scopper Gaban? It might just be because he occupies a similar position to Ray Lee and has a similar facial design to Hyogoro, both of whom served as Haki instructors for Luffy, but I feel like Gaban has something to add of his own to the Luffy arsenal. And whatever that is might become apparent during this fight for the key. Gaban could test Luffy's strength, his speed, his Hakis, his future sight, maybe even Gear 5th. And then after all of that, Gaban could whip out something that we've not seen before. Or if we have, we haven't really registered it. Some other form of Haki advancement. And something else I should comment on is the length of the chapter. This was another 13-pager, which are becoming very common in One Piece. However, something extremely magical happened this week, which is that One Piece was published for 4 weeks in a row. I actually didn't expect to be here recording this week, because it is such a guarantee that after 3 chapters in a row, Oda will take a break. But not this time. The mad lad, he plowed through and gave us 4 chapters in a row. And I honestly don't even remember the last time that happened. In pre-time skip One Piece, it happened all the time, but this has not been the standard in the post-time skip era. And with that in mind, I don't consider 13 pages a short chapter. I consider them to be 13 bonus pages on top of the other 3 chapters, and I think it shows that Oda is being very conscious about the stark increase in breaks over the past couple of years and is maybe trying to make up for that, although hopefully it doesn't come at the cost of his health. But another thing he might be conscious of is the One Piece timeline. As the more breaks that get taken, the further and further away the end date gets pushed. And if you'd like to know more about that end date, I would highly recommend this video, which estimates that One Piece is currently on track to end in 2032, which may sound completely ridiculous, but give me a chance to explain, because the logic that goes into this estimation is quite frightening, and the amount of chapters that will be published between now and then are a lot less than you may think.